All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. I hope you're doing well. So today we're going to go over the interrogation of Shayna Hubers, at least as much as we can. It's not really an interrogation. It's more of a bunch of clips of her looking like a psycho that are edited together. And you have the classic amateur ballet moves clip where she's brings her leg up. And then you have the classic sing Amazing Grace like a lunatic clip where she's in there like and the way she's singing the song, it's almost like she's trying to paint the whole thing like I have been in a long, dark, abusive relationship. It's been a long, dark time, and finally I did what an abused woman was forced to do, and now finally the sun is coming up. And she's in there like, to save a wretch like me. And then the door opens, the detective comes in and is like, hi, sets a coffee down and goes, I'll be right back. And Shayna just goes, thank you. And we don't really get to see any of the strategies the law enforcement use because they edit pretty much everything they say out. But some that I think you can tell are, one, I don't think it's a coincidence they put a female police officer in there, which was a uniform cop. I've never seen an interrogator wear a police uniform like that, so thinking maybe they got there and they were like, all right, well, we got to put a female in there so we can keep up the whole, like, he was abusing you, you know, go along with that. When she starts talking about how much she was thrown around the room and how much he said that he hated her, to have a female in there being like, yes, yes. And so I think that was definitely a strategy. And I was thinking maybe that police officer, the woman that's in there, that basically just had to sit there and nod her head yes the whole time and say little things like, so you shot him like this? And Shayna's like, yes, exactly, like 6 more times like this. And then, so it wasn't I don't think it was the hardest to get Shayna going in the blabbing like a idiot murderer direction. But I was thinking maybe the reason that uniform cop was in there, maybe she was part of the arresting crew, and Shayna felt comfortable with her out back to the police station, and so it started rambling already, and they were like, all right, well, she's talking to you. You go in there and start. And at one point, there is a male detective in there, but also in a police officer uniform, so I don't know if that's just a Kentucky thing, or they didn't have detectives that night, or maybe they called the interrogators and like, all right, we got one, come on down, and then called them back 5 minutes later and was like, actually, I think we're good. The beat cops are really doing well on this one. Cut to Shayna like, na, 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 na. All right, so let's get into it. It's not in chronological order. Sometimes she's got her red jacket on. Sometimes she has it off. It's pretty impossible to tell what comes first. So I'm just going to start with the most Hubersian line of the whole thing first. This just boils her whole essence down. All right, so quote, at some point she goes, I shot him probably 6 times. I shot him in the head. He fell and was twitching, and I shot him a couple more times just to make sure he's dead, because I didn't want to watch him die. Doot, 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 Shayna, doot, boop. So that's her. She shot him dead because she didn't want to watch him die. The logic of Shayna Hubers. And I would say that she's definitely, you know, clinically a psycho, or whatever the word they're using. And just my opinion, I would say that she's used laughing and crying to get out of all of the weird situations she puts herself in that she has no idea how to navigate because she's totally insane. And so you see that a lot during the interrogation. At one point, she's sitting there with her arms crossed, and she goes, I don't know if anyone will want to marry me if they heard that I killed a boyfriend in self-defense. It's not funny, but so what she's doing is she's testing the officer, like, is she gonna go along with me? Because deep down I think this is funny, and I'm a total psycho, so I don't know what anyone else is thinking about it, so maybe I'll go with her. And she's kind of gone along with me up until this point of this whole, like, he was abusing me. She hasn't challenged me on that, so she's laughing, like, after I killed a boyfriend in self-defense. And then you could tell she realizes, okay, no one else is laughing. Switch to cry. And she does this thing where it's not funny, but the one I watched started with her saying, let's see. She was like, I wasn't even being mean. I was just begging him to stay in the relationship. Which, anytime you're begging to stay in the relationship, it's time to go. Just time to looking back on relationships in my life, knowing when it's just, all right, it's time to go is a huge talent to have. And so she's begging to stay in. She goes, because I knew we truly loved each other. And then a line she uses over and over again, she goes, and I think at some point that love grew to hate. I think his love grew to hate. I think my love in the moment grew to hate. And you can also tell there's an energy where she's ecstatic. She's very happy with what she did. I think that she fantasized about killing him for a while, a jealous rage. Even some of the things that she talks about where she talks about, I think it's her mom that was in jail, but it kind of cuts out. But she talks about how someone that she knew was in jail, and when they were in jail, the women that they got along with the most were the women that had killed their husbands. So it's like almost like in her head, she's already chalked up, like, I was an abused woman and I killed my husband and this is my life route. And so the love is growing to hate. And then she gets to the part, she goes, I don't know if anyone will want to marry me if they've heard that I've killed a boyfriend in self-defense. Laughing. It's not funny, but... and then... So she has to make what... To make it look like self-defense, she has to make it look like she was abused or beaten up, or she keeps using the word thrown around the room, but she doesn't have any injuries. So she has to paint a picture of, like, he was throwing me around the room, but I always landed on some place soft. She goes, the stuff he was saying to me was so abusive, which it probably was. I mean, it's at the brutal end of a horrible relationship. And so the stuff he was saying to me was so abusive while he was throwing me around the room. In the midst of that, I think my love turned to hate. And she goes, I remember screaming, fuck you. How dare you mock my family? How dare you? Let's see. I wrote down now has coat. What does that mean? Now has coat. Oh, yeah. So now it switches to now she has her red coat on. So now we're in like a whole different part of the interrogation, which it's hard to kind of get like a rhythm of the whole thing building into her confessing or trying to not confess, but confessing anyway. And then she goes, if I don't get any serious consequences, I think I'm just happy with just a career, not getting married, because this is traumatic to live with, knowing I did that to someone I told I love you every day. So she didn't say, this is hard because I killed someone I love. She goes, this is traumatic for me because I did that to someone I told I love you every day. I'm a psycho. La ha ha. All right, moving on. Oh yeah, so then now is when her story of how she has to realistically explain to police officers how did it go from you begging to stay in the relationship to you shooting him out of self-defense. And she doesn't have much, and she's clearly making it up at the time, in real time, to the point where I almost want to say, Shayna, come on. We can just tell you're making this up. And she goes, yeah, she goes, he was screaming, and there was a lamp. The details she picks are hilarious. She goes, he was screaming, and he had his hand in my face, and there's a lamp. And this is after he threw me around the room. And he said emotionally to me. She added in, it was emotional, okay? He said emotionally to me, you're a fucking hillbilly. I fucking hate you. I hate everything about you for what you are. That's another step. That's another sign that the relationship is just done. When the person is saying, I hate everything about you for what you are. With the Jodi Arias case, she ended up the cleaning lady. The guy was dating another woman, and she was the cleaning lady. In this one, the big red flag is the fact that he hates everything that you are. Not just hanging out with you or the way you do something annoying, just the whole essence. And then she goes, when I shot him, and this is where she just totally looks like a psycho. And it's like, why would you bring this up to the police officer? Just sit there and say I was abused and I want a lawyer. But now she's fully on like psycho theater major, acting the whole thing out. She's falling on the floor. She's doing the whole thing. She's pounding on the table for effect to try to portray to the officer how mean he was being, and pounding. And like I said, she's laying on the floor, pretty much like doing an act out of the whole thing. And I'm sure the police officer is still just in there going, yes, okay, keep going. And so she goes, when I shot him, he did this. And he falls on the table, and she goes, literally, that's when I knew he was dead or close to it and twitching. And she really looks and sounds evil in that part, because, you know, she's like, he called me a hillbilly, doing her cry face. He said that he hates my whole family. And then a couple seconds later, well, I guess you don't know if it's a couple seconds later, but she goes, that's when I knew he was dead or close to it and twitching. It's like, okay, probably shouldn't have told him that. She goes, let's see, hold on. And then the part that's just unexplainable is how many times that she shot him. And maybe there's a better way of explaining it. She picked, I'm so compassionate that I just couldn't watch him. I couldn't watch him twitch. It was too hard. I didn't want to watch him die, so I shot him in the head. I unloaded the full clip on him. So she's trying to keep up this. He threw me around the room, and he said he hated me. And at one point she goes, he did something weird with his arm, so I shot him. It's like, it's not like he was punching me or strangling me, and the last thing I could do. It's like he did something weird with his arm. There was a lamp right here. He said he hated me. And she goes, even though the hurt, I still, and that's on me, I love him, but I couldn't stand to watch him twitch. I knew he was going to die or have a completely deformed face. He's very vain. And then again, it's like, I don't know why you chose to say this next part. It's probably the worst thing you could have said is, if you don't want to go to jail forever. She goes, one of the last conversations, good conversations that we had was he wanted my best friend that's a dentist to do his veneers for him, and he also wanted a nose job. That's the kind of person that he was. And I gave him his nose job. I shot him right here. And then again, just like the one where she wanted to laugh it off with the officer, she realized the officer is just not going along at all with her. Just like, I gave him a nose job. I'm sure you can't see the officer's face, but I'm sure the officer is just like, and then again, she just goes, up. She's not going along with me. Better act sad again. And then she goes, I picked up the gun in the middle of him doing something crazy with his arm or saying something crazy. She couldn't remember. She's like, was he doing something crazy with his arm? Or did he say something? I don't know. And then I shot him. And you can tell that during a lot of what she's saying, it gets to the kind of the point of the end of a sentence, and then she realizes, like, okay, that's not going to be sufficient for them, so I better keep adding to it. So she goes, something different, crazy with his arm, or saying something crazy. I shot him. I thought, oh my God, what have I done? And it's like, okay, you're going to have to get somewhere. And then it's like, and then the clip ends. And then now there's a male detective in there. And this is a long, I'm just going to read this one word for word, because this is the story that she gives. The one clip of the whole thing where there's a male detective in there, this is what he gives. This is the story she gives to him. Again, I wish that we could hear their responses to some of this stuff. So this goes back to her explaining. She goes, I knew he was going to die a very slow and painful death. I knew he was already dead, you know. It was going to be in the next 20 seconds, or in the next 2 minutes. I knew he was going to be dead. He was twitching and moaning, but he was ultimately dead. And so I shot him enough times to kill him so that he wouldn't suffer at that point, which was a few more times. I think I shot him twice more, though. He was completely dead, and he was laying there, still twitching, making noises, and I shot him in the head. You could see why they probably didn't need the interrogators there. They're like, nah, the beat cops are doing great. And let me see what else I got. Yeah, I mean, that might be it for the whole, like I said in the last video, when they do finally leave, she's pacing around, and at one point she like pops her lips, and she goes, yep, I did it. And she does one of these with her hands. She goes, yep, I did it. And then she goes, I can't believe I did that. And then she remembers that she's being recorded, and she looks up at the camera and is like, whoops. And I had said last time that she had got 40 years, and it's kind of funny. So she got found guilty, 40 years, and then she asked for a new trial because one of the jurors had a felony they didn't disclose, and then so she got a new trial, and on that one she was found guilty again and got life. So should have stuck with her 40 years. In the trial, in the second trial, a bunch of her cellmates were testified, which I don't know if you can believe, but they seemed believable. They testified like, yeah, she bragged that it wasn't in self-defense, and she made a comment that Ryan has a rich family and they can buy a new kid. I'm a total psycho. But there it is, folks. Shayna Hubers. I wish they had the full thing out there, but probably will never see it. I hope you're having a good Friday. I will see you next time. Why? Stiving why? Shum.